This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
We're back, baby. We're going to talk about this football game coming up on Monday night between the Patriots and the Bears. But first, I remind you, the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, brought to you by our friends at Athletic Greens, the one-stop shopping for 75 high-quality vitamins to help you start your day right. Greg, let's start where we've started the last several weeks. That is Mac Jones on the practice field, looking mobile. Is he back in the saddle on Monday night?
Sure seems like it. I mean, things can change, and they will. A lot of this injury stuff is, testing, seeing how they bounce back, that sort of thing. It's one thing they've been off. This is the first time they've been on the practice field or on the field since the game. So I'm sure Mac feels great. Now, how does he feel tomorrow? That's another test. One thing that I wanted to point out to people, and also Nick wasn't on the pod that I recorded the other day. Just something to point out, because there's been a lot of discussion, or there was before today, about how all the reporters in Cleveland said that Mac looked terrible on Sunday on the field, throwing and things like that. And I just wanted to make sure that people understand how that could happen, because basically what we've seen on the practice field, every week he's made a little bit more progress. And then all of a sudden on Sunday, game day, he didn't look good. And then, some people were speculating, I don't even know if he's going to be able to play against the Bears. How does that square up with him being better today and just progressing and as usual? So what people need to understand, and this is both my experience covering the league and also my own personal experience with I've more than a few times I've had severe ankle sprains that I've had to come back from. And basically with every NFL athlete, at some point in time when you're coming back from an injury, there's they try to strike the right balance between hey, we want you to heal up, but also at some point we gotta test it. We got to see what it can do. We don't want you to hurt it further, so we're going to let you rest. But at some point in time, they say, all right, we got to push it to see what's going on here. And I think either Friday at practice or possibly Saturday in the hotel at Cleveland, they usually have a big ballroom. They go through walkthroughs and stuff like that. At some point, either Friday or Saturday, was Mac's sort of push it day to see, could he play against the Browns? It also could explain why he traveled to Cleveland, that they said, all right, let's try it once we get to Cleveland and then we'll see. Worst case scenario, you're on the sidelines, what have you. And so I think they tried it and, they just said, in the middle of it, at the end of it, you're not moving around well enough. Let's pull the plug on this. And then what you saw on Sunday in Cleveland was sort of the aftermath of that he was sore and things like that. But that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean it's a setback. That's part of the biggest thing with these ankle injuries is getting the strength back. So at some point you got to push it. That's why they keep them on their feet all the time. You don't just go into a boot and have a leg up with an ankle sprain. They put you right back on your feet because they want you to get your strength back as soon as possible. Right. And so testing that, and Mac's recovery, that's part of the strengthening. And then today you see the videos out of practice. I mean, he's sprinting, he's moving around. I bet you he's going to feel like crap tomorrow. But again, taking a step forward to go back and all that stuff, that's all necessary with this type of injury.
All right, aside from the health, because we have to imagine that everybody has Mac Jones's health in the forefront of their mind as far as whether or not he's going to play. Watching the film, I know Jeff Howe, our friend, reported that he will be the starting quarterback when he is healthy. Does the film justify that, Greg?
Yeah, and I sort of laid it out in the last podcast, but I also wanted to give you sort of your chance to share your opinion on this, Nick, because I'm sure the people want to hear it and I want to hear it. But to me, clearly the film shows that Mac is, to me, he's clearly the starter. I don't even think Bailey Zappe is competition for him. I mean, unless Mac's playing terrible, that's something else, and I don't expect him to. Again, I think and we're going to talk about this with you because I want to get your perspective on this, but I think this is all about context. And I think, first of all, people have forgotten how good Mac was. And I'm not saying he was great, but for where he was, a rookie and all that stuff, and with surrounded by a bunch of new guys in the offense, 2 new receivers, 2 new tight ends, the offensive line had terrible issues through about the first half of last season. Similar to like the first few games this year. They've rectified it a lot quicker this year. To me, Mac just does everything better than Bailey Zappe, including, Zappe does I will say, you could make the argument that Bailey Zappe is better than Mac Jones as far as his pocket calmness and presence. But it's hard to say that definitively because he hasn't been under duress. He's barely gotten rushed in these 2 games. I mean, the numbers clearly bear that out. We saw him get sped up 1 time in the 2 games. After the strip sack, the drive right after that, he rushed some of his throws. He airmailed Devontae Parker, which wasn't a terrible play considering the coverage. He airmailed Hunter Henry. That's the only time he's been exposed to, oh man, these guys could actually hit me in the NFL. I get sped up a little bit. And I think Mac's arm is better, even on some of Bailey Zappe's biggest throws. The 2 throws to Jacoby Myers that I broke down on BSJ today, they're the same play, same formation in the second and fourth quarters. One, Jacoby Myers comes across the field. The other one, he breaks out. On both of those passes, you can see sort of Bailey Zappe's arm limitation. It takes a while for the ball to get there, and it loses energy on both passes. But, to me, Mac is clearly the starter. And here's my question for you, Nick. And, give me your opinion on this whole thing. But also, I want to know, because you talk to the people, you are one of the people. When it comes to the Patriots, I would say you're more, you definitely come with more of a fan hat than I do. And so I just want to understand, like, why do fans refuse? When things are bad, they'll do it. But when things are good, they refuse to put things in their proper context, like the 2 worst defenses in the NFL that the Patriots and Zappe just played. Why do they cast that off? But, say if Zappe went against the hardest defenses in the league, I'm sure they would take that into consideration. I just don't understand it because clearly, and also not only is it the opponent, but the amount of play action, 3 times more for Bailey Zappe that we were begging earlier in the season for Mac Jones. The amount of motion, Mac Jones was asked to throw down the field a lot more and against much tougher defenses. I just don't understand the lack of context in some of these conversations.
I think it's a justifiable question to ask. And I think, there's a lot of different answers dependent on which fan you're talking about. I think some fans look at analytics as nerd stuff and they go, yeah, whatever. And they just kind of push it aside. I think some fans just don't have the time because of their lives. They've got children, they've got full-time jobs to sit down and watch film. So they go to the common denominator of stuff, the lowest common denominator and the low hanging fruit, so to speak. I think some of it is,
right. He won and played well. The media.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of thing. Like he won, completed 80% of his passes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Like it is what it is, right? Like he played well, they won. Who cares? All that matters is winning, right? And that's why I think when they win, it's all that matters is winning. When they lose, it's why did they lose? It's kind of a philosophy to approach things. I also think it's part of the media's fault. And I'm not talking about legit journalists. It's funny with the Ben Volin stuff. There's been a lot of talk the last 24 to 48 hours about journalists and who's legit, who's not legit. And, are radio host journalists? No, they're not. Radio hosts are not journalists. TV talking heads mostly are not journalists. Beat writers, guys that follow the team, women that follow the team and write about the team and have legitimate sources and all of that stuff. Those are journalists. And, I think, the radio aspect of all of this has really taken over in some of the podcast space where, men and women in the media, some of them, not all of them, they go the hot take route. They go, again, with the lowest common denominator, simplest kind of debate and conversation, the whole keep it silly, keep it, simple, silly, and all that kind of stuff. all of those things weigh in. They're all different factors that you put into one big bucket as to why fans philosophically look at things the way they do. And I also just think that inherently some fans, they err on the positive and optimistic side. And when things are going well, again, they kind of just say, hey, they won. That's all that matters. On to the next one. And if they lose, it's, well, why did that happen? So I think it's a very difficult answer because it's really dependent on who's answering the question for you as a fan. But I think it's a lot of those different things that I hit all kind of the perfect storm into one, where you get the people that push back and they don't want to pay attention to the context. I agree with you for what it's worth that, I don't think Mac is getting pushed. I don't think Mac is in danger of losing his job. I think the play calling has been obviously different since Mac's been down. I think they've played teams that aren't good. Green Bay just got easily dismantled by the Jets last week at Lambeau. We talked about Cleveland. We talked about Detroit. There's a reason why, we nailed those predictions when we did about the games, because there just weren't good defenses. You and I knew the quarterbacks on those teams weren't great and those defenses weren't great, and that Bailey Zappe had a chance to win those games, and he should have won those games, and he did win those games. So tip of the cap to him. So I just think, when we look at it, it's our job to put it in perspective and to try to add that context. It's not really the fans' job. The fans' job is to watch the games and enjoy football. That's what they're worried about. So, some of these people on Twitter, they go back and forth because they love to.
Yeah, Nick, those are all interesting points, and thanks for bringing them up and sort of giving me the other perspective. One thing, you were talking about sort of the media part of this, and look, I'm not going to comment on Ben Volin's situation. It's just something I try not to do. Some of our jobs are hard, and sometimes we make mistakes and what have you. Whatever Ben's deal is Ben's deal is. But one thing I did want to mention that you sort of talked about in the differences between radio and TV and journalists and stuff like that. One thing I wanted to point out to people is, look, a couple of different things. Number one, I've heard from a lot of people, including members of my own site, where they say, you've changed over the last couple of years. That might be true. It could be true. I don't necessarily agree with it. I will say my first opinion is, let's look at what's changed in the last 2 or 3 years. To me, it's clearly the Patriots' success or lack thereof compared to previously. I mean, they're 20-20 since Brady left. They crapped out down the stretch, even Brady's last year. So they basically, since Thanksgiving, they have a losing record, when we all knew, similar to last year, that their 8-0 start to that season was kind of fraudulent, and even Brady acknowledged that at times. It's a lot easier. It's a lot different. And I even think this goes for journalists doing the job. It's a lot easier when the team's winning all the time to write, to talk about the team.
Right.
People love to hear great things about their teams, and it's a lot easier to write that. But when they're struggling, you can't keep your head in the sand. I mean, that's why I've always stayed. At the end of the day, I try to stay true to the film, because I think the film never lies. Sometimes I can make mistakes with that film, but it does give me a sense of confidence when I give my opinion on things. And I'm not saying I'm right all the time. I'm not right all the time. Nobody is. But the other thing I wanted to acknowledge is, look, times have changed in the media game. When I first started at the Boston Globe, really when I was at the Boston Globe, and even when I went to Sports Illustrated, I could pretty much stay in my lane and just sort of write X's and O's stuff and stay right down the middle and all that stuff and stay out of the opinion game largely, which I like to do, I would prefer to do. But, since I started BSJ and sort of the changing media landscape, whether it's Felger and Maz or on this podcast or on my site, people want to know what I think. And, and that goes for all media, not just me. But I have to give my opinion more. And do I like it? No. Would I rather do it the way I used to do it? Yeah. But the game has just changed. And I just try to, even though that's uncomfortable for me, I still try to stay fact-based, film-based, analytics-based, anything that I can do to back up my opinion. I very rarely just give you my opinion. If I give you my opinion, I have data to back it up. And that even goes back to when I was at the Globe. And that's something that I told Belichick, Brady, and Kraft when I started on this beat. When I met with each of them, I said, look, anything that you can help me do to stay fair and fact-based and balanced and in my coverage, I would greatly appreciate it. And that was reciprocated by all of them. And it continues to be to this day. And so I just wanted to make those things clear because I think it's a good time to sort of, talk about that stuff a little bit.
You and I could do, I think, an hours-long podcast on this stuff. Just a couple of things, because I will comment on Ben Volin in a minute or two, because I feel comfortable in doing so. Mm-hmm. But looking at the landscape that you mentioned, Greg, there's a lot of factors that go into what we do on a daily basis. And when you're on the outside looking in, and this is not to mean like, oh, you don't understand to people listening. It's what we do for our career. It's our profession. It's like, if somebody has a special skill and they're a mechanic or something, I don't know everything that goes into being a mechanic. Even if I knew something about cars and I loved cars, I don't necessarily know how to screw around with a carburetor. So when we talk about the radio business, there's so many different levels to why people do what they do, why they talk the way they talk, why they present and deliver things the way they present and deliver them. It's been a battle for me personally being a radio host because I am not the hot take guy. I don't enjoy throwing stuff up against the wall. I'm very opinionated, but usually, when even in the strongest of opinions that I have, I try to have something tangible to go to and attach it and say, this is why I feel this way, and give people the evidence. I do think people, some of them in my business, are lazy. I do think they're complacent. I do think they grab the lowest hanging fruit because they do 20 or 25 hours of radio a week. And people might say, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Trust me, folks, when you're doing 20 hours of radio a week and you're reading what you're reading and you're watching what you're watching and just trust me, there's a lot more work that goes into it than it might seem. And the truly best at what I do in this business, the truly best of them, they might make it look easy because they're that good at it. So just try to put that in perspective and just to shed some light in Greg's position. I don't want to speak for Greg. I do think people are interested in this stuff. So put Greg's, we talk about context, put Greg in context with the Felger and Maz show. Greg has 2 hours to go in there, which about 41 minutes each hour, 42 minutes, depending on breaks. He's got about 90 minutes a week to get all of his thoughts out there, his ideas, his film work, some of the stuff that he's been sourcing. And this is not to defend Greg. If Greg gets something wrong, he gets something wrong. Nobody's perfect. But I just want to, again, put it into context. He's walking into a wood chipper. Felger and Maz is a wood chipper. I've been in it. Greg's in it weekly. And so Felger and Maz, they are the ones that dictate the conversation. And they will ask questions of Greg. And Greg, yes, there's prep work done and there's an email chain. And Felger is very, very deliberate about that stuff and methodical. But still, Greg is on that show and he is at the behest of the hosts. If Greg, it's not like Greg can take the football and run it for himself and say, screw you guys, this is the Greg Bedard show now. I mean, it can't happen. So it was similar with me and Adam Jones, and I love Adam and I think Adam's, good at what he does. But, there was the constant battle that people heard. And it was because, Adam does his show his way and I do my radio a different way. And so sometimes, it's really difficult, especially when you're doing 5 hours a night, to be able to just kind of, okay, well, yeah, I agree with you. We're just going to move on. So just put it in perspective. As far as Volin goes, look, I think what happened is inexcusable. I might not be a journalist, but I do have my BA in journalism. I went to college for journalism. My initial plan was to be a legit journalist until one of my professors told me that they don't make money and the computer's going to take over. So, I do know some about this stuff, and you have to vet your sources. You have to check 2-3 times on things that you're going to go put out there in the public in the public sphere. You cannot take a DM from somebody that you don't know and not vet it and go out there on the radio in a market, especially like Boston, and say what you said. It's irresponsible. It's inexcusable. And I also think it damages other journalists that do their jobs professionally. It damages the Jeff Howes, the Mike Reeses, the Greg Bedards, the Mike Giardis. I can go on and on, the Evan Lazars. And, I got back and forth with somebody on Twitter, and it didn't get ugly, but I got back and forth with somebody on Twitter yesterday, and it was like the minority, because I said, there's the minority that don't do their job the way they should. And somebody pushed back and said, minority, how about this guy and that guy? And they threw you in there as well, and Tom Kernan. And I was like, look, even if you name 5 people or 6 people, even if there are so many, Karen is another name that does her job impeccably. There are so many, the Patriots.com guys. Yes, it's Sunshine Radio and all that fun stuff that they have, but there are so many people doing the work, so many people that have the sources and vet the sources. Does it mean that Greg's been right all the time? No, and I'm sure Greg would tell you that. I'm sure he got something from a source or two that ended up not being true. The idea is that when you're a journalist, you have to get sourcing, and you have to put your trust in those sources that you have, that they're telling you legitimate information. At all times, you also know they have agendas themselves because they're human beings. And sometimes when you're trying to sift through all of it, a crack slips through. It happens to everybody. Have you done your job flawless? Whether you're a nurse or a doctor or a mechanic or a custodian or a front desk coordinator, have you always done your job 100% correctly and got nothing wrong, never made a mistake? Did you ever put trust into other people that might have used that trust against you, and there was nothing at the end of the day that you could have done? Again, we have to keep it in perspective as far as what journalists do, and that they're not always going to be flawless. But there is no excuse for what Ben Volin did. Let's jump to the Athletic Greens, Greg, before we talk about the AFC East.
I started taking AG1 because I wanted to make sure I was getting all the vitamins and nutritional supplements I needed in one place. Now I've been on it for a month or 3 months, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy, even though it's a green juice. People will like green juice, bleh. But I'm telling you, it has a kind of a mild tropical taste, a little minty, and I actually look forward to it each morning. I'm telling you. So what is this stuff? With 1 scoop of delicious AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the things you're looking for. I take it first thing in the morning. It's now part of my routine, and I'd be lost without it. I love how it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Bedard. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Bedard to take ownership over your health and pick up the daily nutritional insurance.
Let's look at this division. AFC East, we look at all the records and all the teams. Greg, where do you think the Patriots kind of slide in to this division right now?
Good question. I mean, I think Buffalo's far and away the best team in the division. I think they've actually done a pretty good job of navigating a very difficult early part of their schedule. That's been very impressive to me. I think especially with they've had a lot of injuries in the back end. They got one of their safeties back. When you looked at it, the Rams Ravens and Chiefs, and now the Packers after their bye week coming up. You know, you looked at that, and I looked at that, and I thought, oh, they might get off to kind of a slow start, but eventually they're gonna play the same sort of cupcakes that the Patriots have played, and it's in, you know. But I think they're far and away the better team. I think that. Look, I'm going to have to defer to you on the Jets. I haven't seen them one single bit, not even on TV. I will wait until after the Bears game to watch the film on them going into that game. I don't know, how good they are. I know I could just tell you from, past years, guys like Jonathan Franklin Myers up front are guys that I have a lot of respect for on film. Sauce Gardner is there now at cornerback, might be a difference maker. And, so Jets is sort of to be determined. They have a better record. What's interesting about them is they are going to. So they have sort of, is it them? No, the Dolphins have their cupcake part of the schedule coming up, sort of like the Patriots. But so the Jets are at Denver this week. They could be 5-2. I mean, and then they have New England, Buffalo, New England. They could go 0-3, come back to earth. They could split with the Patriots. Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, Jacksonville, at Seattle. They've only lost to the Ravens and the Bengals. So they're to be determined. I don't know what to make of them. The Dolphins obviously beat you. I think, if Tua comes back this week and stays healthy, I think that they're better than the Patriots, and they beat them, and they have their layup part of the schedule coming up with Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and Houston. I think Watson's going to be back for the Dolphins game for Cleveland, so that completely changes them as a team. It changes how you defend them. Like the Patriots were confident, we could stack the box and not worry about Jacoby Brissett because he's Jacoby Brissett. You do that against Deshaun Watson, forget about it. So the Dolphins could legitimately be 8-3 and go on a little running streak here, a winning streak similar to the Patriots. So that's sort of the way I see things. I'll be interested to hear your comments, especially on the Jets.
Well, the Jets, I look at them and I haven't seen them at all, really, just like you. I haven't had the opportunity to watch them a lot. But when you do look at them, they're similar to the Patriots in a way that, when you look at their wins, right? They beat Brissett, they beat Trubisky/Pickett. That was the game Trubisky left. They put Pickett in for the second half when they beat Pittsburgh. They beat Miami, but that was with Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater. Thompson went out with an injury. Bridgewater came back from his concussion. And obviously they had a really good win last week against Green Bay, but I'm not a big believer in Green Bay. I said that before the Patriots game, and I would have loved to see what would have happened in that Green Bay game if it was Mac Jones and not Bailey Zappe. But I think Rodgers was dead on accurate a couple of weeks ago when he said, we gotta play better and be better. We're not going to keep winning the way we're winning. He said that after the Patriots game. And since then, look what happened. They went to London, they got beat by the Giants, and then they got beat by the Jets at home easily, really. So they haven't really wowed me with any of their wins. And I don't think you could look at the Patriots wins and say, wow. So I think they're in a very similar category. I would lean with the Patriots being better than the Jets. I think that will be the end result. I do think the Jets will come back to earth a little bit. Especially, their defense when they start playing some tougher teams. Miami, I would say, is a tick above the Patriots. Like you said, they beat the Patriots. So head to head, Miami proved they were the better team. Will that be the case by the end of the year? I don't know. But right now, they are the better team, especially with Tua coming back and with the schedule they have coming up. So I would have the Patriots likely, third in the division right now. And that's dependent on, Mike McDaniel. I don't want to anoint him yet either. I thought people kind of went bananas about McDaniel's offense because they had one unbelievable electric half against Baltimore who blew like 3 coverages. If you look at some of their other games, the way they were playing, it wasn't like they were going, absolutely haywire offensively. So pump the brakes a little bit on McDaniel. Let's see how, this all comes together after teams have a bunch of film. And I still am not the biggest believer in Tua. I think, with Waddle and Hill, that obviously makes his job much easier. There were still alarming plays in that Patriots game that I can't turn a blind eye to. And I've seen him several times, even when he got concussed. Look, Not going to blame him for the concussion, okay? But that was a sack you can't take. I mean, and he takes sacks that you can't take. He makes mistakes. He puts the ball up in places at times that he shouldn't. So I still want to see him as a quarterback through a full season before I sit there and go, oh no, two is nails. So we'll see how all of that comes together. But right now the Patriots are third in that division. But let's get into this weekend's game. Patriots, Greg, they are 9-point favorites. Monday Night Football, the over-under is 40.
So a couple of points of interest here. I have not watched Bears film yet. I'm taking advantage of the Monday game, so I'm going to do that today and tomorrow. So my definitive view on this game will be at BSJ at bostonsportsjournal.com. And also remind people that if you want to see sort of what we're talking about the information I give people with, video analysis and play breakdown and player ratings, my game breakdowns, if you go over and you click on my Bedard's breakdown for the Browns game, at the top, you'll see the link to 3 free articles, or at least they've been pulled off the paywall. And so you can see everything, including my video analysis of the coach's film. So at some point I'll have Bears stuff up there. Yeah, I can't wait to watch this Bears film. It should be scintillating. But look, pending my film review, I'll tell you, if Zappe was starting this game, I might think about just taking the Bears because I do think he's got to come down to earth. And I do think that the Bears defense is decent. And they seem to be they seem to be getting some people back. But the Bears offense is freaking horrible. I mean, it's probably the worst in the league. It's horrendous. And with Mac Jones, the other factor is Mac Jones is coming back. Mac Jones is not going to regain his starting spot. He wants to put up a 50 burger in this game to shut everybody up. And I wouldn't doubt him and the Patriots doing that. And also, he's very popular with his teammates, guys like David Andrews and Jacoby Myers and those guys might be like, hey, They hear the noise. It might be like, hey, people have forgotten how good Mac is. Let's go out and ball out for Mac, and let's light the world on fire. So I could definitely see that. I'm banking on something like that happening. So I'm taking the Patriots, and I am going to my score. Let's say 40-13. So I'm going with the over also.
Woo. Blowout city. Look, extra day, this being a Monday night. So you're giving Belichick an extra day and that staff to prepare for Justin Fields. And what you said is accurate. They are just woeful offensively. I don't know, aside from turnovers and special teams plays, which you can't predict, I don't know how Chicago scores more than 13 in this game. So it's really going to be up to the Patriots. As far as that over-under and the -9, can the Patriots get to, 24, 27, 31? I think with Mac back, they can. So I will also take the Patriots -9, and I would go over the 40. And let's see if we go to 7-0 on the season. Greg, let's get to the BSJ Member Question.
Real quick, I just wanted to point out to people that just to give them some context, the Bears are the 30th ranked offense by DVOA efficiency compared to the rest of the league over at footballoutsiders.com. Their defense is 19th, which is actually a big improvement over what the Patriots have been playing. They are 14th against the pass, 27th against the run. So that hopefully when Mac Jones back in the saddle, let's see the same stuff. Run the ball, yes. Play action. Let's go. I want to see Mac around the same as Bailey Zappe, 35% of play action. Like, let's get it going. Let's go back to the old Patriots offense and just stay there. Can we, please?
Go back to what you do well, please. Yeah. BSJ Member Question of the Day, of course, $39.99 on the annual plan. You get all the great coverage, Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, also Greg with the coach's film and the chats every week. Check it out at bostonsportsjournal.com. Greg, what is the BSJ Member Question of the Day?
So Cape Cod Scott, who's been a great longtime member over there, he sort of asked, because I posted a story, basically, the Patriots ran the same play twice against the Browns in this game, almost from the same exact yard line. If you look at you look at my Twitter account or you go on BSJ, you'll see a picture. I put up a picture to start. Like, at quick glance, do you think these are the same play or different plays? And they're the same yard line, going the same direction, same formation, same personnel, and it's when they ran Myers at the top of his route, ran an in-cut, Zappe found him. Then the next time they came back in the fourth quarter and ran it, but this time Myers faked inside and went outside, and he got a 27-yarder. So my analysis is basically about, like, if that play was set up by the run earlier from the same formation, you could say that's what I was looking for. And I looked through all the plays because I wanted to be like, there you go, Matt Patricia. That's what I'm talking about. That's play calling in the NFL. Now, it was still a good play call. The next step is sort of setting it up with the run earlier. He didn't do that. And Cape Cod Scott said, I've subscribed to BSJ almost from its inception. I've loved all your video analysis, but I don't remember ever seeing you compare a setup play and subsequent mirror play to illustrate Josh McDaniels doing this. Am I forgetting an instance of that? So basically what I would say to Scott is, first of all, it's just fact. I mean, the Patriots did that all the time under Josh McDaniels. It's also wasn't part of the conversation because he had 20 years of experience in Super Bowl titles and other things as offensive coordinator and play caller. So we didn't really look at that kind of stuff all that carefully because it was sort of like, it's factual. I mean, it just happened. Right. With Matt Patricia, it's different. He's never done this before. So we're analyzing the play calling and how you do things a little bit more. But I'll just say this. You could basically pull out any Patriots game when Josh McDaniels was here, especially when they ran the ball a lot. And I can almost guarantee you they ran the same run action with a guard pulling. They would run a running play with the guard pulling. And then later in the game, they came back, ran play action off of that. Think about Rob Gronkowski over the middle. I mean, how many times did you see that? Guard pull, play action, boom, Rob Gronkowski down the middle of the field. That's what I'm talking about. That's not actually, great play calling. It's not an example of advanced stuff that you see some of the stuff on film around the league, but that's just a basic example of, the run and the run action setting up and giving you a big play in the passing game later in the game.
There you go. There you have it. Scott and Cape Cod. Hopefully, Greg addressed your question as well as you were hoping he would. He's Greg Bedard. I'm Nick Cattles. This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with, you guessed it, Nick Cattles, brought to you by Athletic Greens. Monday Night Football, Bears, Patriots. We'll be back next week to recap that game and hopefully talk about another victory for the Patriots. If not, they're going to have some explaining to do. That's for sure. Until then, be well, be good, and be healthy.